Welcome to Let's Relieve Regret, the uplifting podcast where we talk about how to relieve what you're worrying about.
It can feel so good to finally let go. Let go of past hurts, let go of old grudges, let go of self-doubt, self-shame.
The thing is, we aren't always given the tools to let go. We're told to get over it, or it's time to move on. But how do we do that?
We will share our stories, tools, and strategies of how we let go to help you let go.
Let's begin. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Let's Relieve Regret podcast. My name is Victoria Muir-Bercia, and I am joined by my co-host,
Shadoe Ball.
Welcome, everyone. We're so happy that you're here. This is another episode of Just Shadoe and I. We've got a great lineup of guests coming up in the next coming weeks, but it's also been kind of nice to just be just the two of us too, and to have some conversations that way too, back to the classic way we used to run the podcast in season 1. So welcome. We're so happy that you're joining us today. And why don't we just jump right into it? How are you feeling today, Shadoe, on a scale of 1 to 10?
Today is about like a 7, maybe a 7.5. Weeks ago, you had mentioned that you were pretty crampy. Today, I'm pretty crampy. Yesterday was the worst of it, though. So like today isn't as bad. But you know, it's actually almost worse when you're kind of midway through the period because like the pain isn't constant. It just like comes at you out of nowhere. You're like doing something and then you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
For me, like, you know, versus like on that like second day, like it's just all day. So it's like all day I feel awful. Where like this, like I woke up, had like, you know, feeling pretty good in general. But then it's like, yeah, every 20 minutes or so, I have a reminder that yes, I am currently menstruating.
Yeah, that uterus is squeezing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's like a 7.5. Because again, like it's not the worst. It happens every month. I should be used to it by now. But you know, it's still not my favorite. So how about you?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, for sure.
That's some interesting pre-programming.
Yeah, you think?
Like it's not the worst. I should be used to it. It happens every month. Like every period is different. Every month is different depending on what's going on with your body.
True.
And sometimes there's this expectation that we just need to suck it up when we have period cramps or like to be tough about it. And the thing is that they hurt, and it's okay to say that they hurt and that they suck. And that, I mean, there's kind of like both sides of the coin right now, kind of out there in the zeitgeist, like having your period is like womanhood and you should, you know, and like, let's have period commercials where it shows red water instead of blue water. Right. But we can also say that it sucks. Right. We can also say that and not like wash over it. Cause I think people that don't menstruate need to understand that it's this thing that happens once a month for people that do. And it kind of can feel like having the flu or something for a couple of days.
Oh,
that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. No,
right?
For sure. I think for me, it's kind of too like, okay, yes, all of that. Absolutely, yes. I think the extra pre-programming comes from like, but it's not like I had to go into the office or I had to like go and do like a physical labor job today. Like I'm still having the type of day that most people on their period would love to have. So maybe I shouldn't complain about it.
Well,
you know.
So that pre-programming, as I'm trying to say, is that you're allowed to complain about it because you would probably be saying the exact same thing if you were still working your 9-to-5 job and you would still be going to work, but you'd be like, I can handle it. I can handle the cramps at work, right? Like I read an article a while ago about how it was an argument for extra days for people that menstruate, extra sick days, and how there should be like, it should be more accepted that it's not just something that you should tough out if you have bad periods. Maybe you have endometriosis, maybe you have fibroids, maybe you have all these things, right? And it's the same thing as kind of my argument around the fibroids is health is dominated by preconditioned male biases in many ways and studies. And that's a similar thing. Oh, well, it's normal. It happens to every woman. You get your period, suck it up, get over it.
Right.
Right. And, oh, well, women get fibroids. Don't worry about it. Whatever, right? But that's not the attitude we should have towards these things. It's a real part of the female experience or people who menstruate experience. And it shouldn't just be brushed over if you're having cramps. They
Right.
suck.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's all. That's my comment.
Oh,
Thank you for letting me comment.
no, that's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah. What about, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, I'm gonna say I'm really tired today, so I'm gonna give myself a 7 as well.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll give myself an 8 actually, because I'm just tired. But I did
Yeah.
this to myself. Like I'm just tired. Usually at the end of the week, we're recording on a Friday today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just tired from waking up like, 3, 4 days for rowing. So I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I'm
Fair.
tired, and I'm also getting ready to go to my cottage next week for a
Nice.
girls' week. So I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed about like what are all the things I have to pack? What do I have to get ready? What are the meals I'm
Mm.
gonna make? What's gonna, those sorts of things. So it's
Mm-hmm.
that I hate packing.
Really?
Oh yeah, I hate it. I even
Why?
asked my husband, I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't know. I also like don't like unpacking when I get home from a trip either, but packing stresses me out so much. I don't know why. Like I have anxiety over it. I don't like packing. Am I packing the right clothes? What if I need this? And even just the thought of doing it, I'm like, oh, it's going to take me time to do it. I don't know. I don't like packing. So
Mm.
my brain is starting to wrap itself around of, okay, on Sunday I need to be packed so that I can go to the cottage. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm an 8.
You're an 8? Okay.
You can comment on it if you want.
Sure. No, I'm
Yeah.
just like, is it that you're worried that you're gonna run out of stuff? Or like is there any kind of like what's coming up for you when you start packing? Like what thoughts
Honestly,
come
it's
up?
just a feeling of overwhelm. Like it's a
Okay.
general overwhelm. I don't know if it's a worry that I'm gonna forget something, because what I do, like if I'm traveling overseas, I'm like, okay, if I have my passport and I have my medication, I'm good. Like
Mm,
passport, medication, credit card, right?
right.
Like I can buy toothpaste there if I forget toothpaste. I
Yeah, yeah,
can buy
yeah.
a t-shirt there if right? So I'm good at being like, okay, just make sure you have those basic things. But maybe it's the fear of forgetting the very basic things. Like I've been
Mm-hmm.
pretty open about this. Like I'm on anti-anxiety medication, and I probably will be for my whole life. The thing is if you forget to take it for a couple days, I think that might be the thing that it's bad. Like
Right,
anti-anxiety medication, you can't just stop taking. If you're going to go
right.
off it, you have to wean yourself off it. It's like a 4-week process. And so if you forget it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to my cottage. It's in a different province. If I forget it, I can't just go to a pharmacist and be like, I need like
Mm,
5 pills of this medication.
right.
And if you can, like, I've forgotten it for 3 days in a row before, and you get really bad, I do anyways, dizziness and
Mm,
vertigo, that's what's called,
yeah,
right? Like vertigo, dizziness, and headaches and nausea. So maybe that's it.
maybe.
Yeah, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I just always, my husband's like, here's my t-shirts, here's my pants, whatever, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and I'm like, I can't do. I just walk around the house complaining all the time, and he just is like, just do it. And I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta do this. Okay, I gotta pack this. Like he knows that it gives me so
Yeah, yeah,
much
yeah.
stress. I don't know
That's
why.
that's so tough. So you don't work from like a checklist or anything? It's just
Even when I have the checklist,
even when you have the
I don't
checklist,
know.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's also the thing as a person living with, I'm going to say I'm a person living with controlled anxiety, because, I
Mm.
have a pretty
Mm-hmm.
good grasp on it now. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason for it. It just is. And you have to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, this is what
Yeah.
my brain is doing right now.
Fair.
I don't know if I need to find the reason. I just
Right.
know that this particular thing gives me anxiety. I could find the reason
Mm-hmm.
and maybe CBT my way out of it, but
Right.
also pick and choose what you put your energy into.
For sure. I also
Yeah.
wonder if this is something where you don't need to necessarily find the reason because it's possible that there is no like
Yeah.
pinpointed reason. I'm just maybe the solution is to look at like when, like, I'm sure you've packed for trips well in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you have evidence. You have evidence to show your brain that you can do this.
Yeah. I can do this.
So,
I can do this. I can do
yeah.
this. I can do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I can do this.
I say that being someone who overpacks, I'm such an overpacker, it's ridiculous. And I start early. Like if I'm
Yeah.
going somewhere in a month, like I like as I'm like every time I do a load of laundry, I'm like, oh, I really want to take that with me. So I literally have the open suitcase in another room that I just start like every time I'm doing laundry, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna grab these two things. And I do that for like a month, and then the night before, I'm still staring at like an empty suitcase with everything all over the place, being like, what am I bringing? What am I wearing? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just one of those things too, where like when you hear someone else say it, you're like, no, don't. But when you're doing it, you're like, it's the end of the world.
Yeah, it's just, and so the thing is, I don't start early because I would just be panicking for the whole time I start early. I'd
Mm,
always do it the day before. So
yeah, I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
so that's my like 7.58 out of 10. That's what's coming up for me. But let's talk about causes for applauses then.
Sure. Yeah.
You have a cause for
Oh my
applause?
gosh, it's the perfect segue. You won't believe it. So a couple days ago, I saw Inside Out 2.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh
Was
my
it
gosh,
good?
Victoria, it's phenomenal. I mean, I had high expectations going in. Like the first one was so good. When the credits started rolling, I literally looked to Ben and said, "It's just so good that it exists."
Yeah.
Because like
Like it
I can't.
explains
It
things so
explains
well.
things so
Yeah.
well, and like to be a kid with this vocabulary around what's going on inside your head would just put you so much further ahead than I was as a child.
It's giving kids the
So
tools to talk about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and also parents the tools too that
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and so it's really
Or
incredible.
adults the
And
tools
adults,
to
yeah.
talk about
Oh,
it.
oh, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. Like, yeah, but I'm also really happy I saw it in theaters, and here's why.
Okay.
Um, it elicited something for me that like when Ben and I are watching movies at home, like, we try not to, but like, well, we start talking, right? Like you start talking and then you miss something and now you got
Yeah.
to go back and rewind it, or
Yeah.
you just say whatever. Or when something is really meaningful, I don't engage as deeply. Not that I'm afraid of his judgment because he's so sweet. It's like my own personal judgment. But like we were in a 19 plus theater. There was only maybe
Mm.
like five other couples there because we went for a matinee screening. And I was bawling. Like the
Oh,
type of crying that like when you blow your nose, other people laugh because it's just you can tell that I've been just like
where you're having a
letting out
connection, you're having
all
a
this
release.
catharsis
Yeah.
where like I don't think even if I had saved that movie for home, I would have engaged as deeply. But because I'm in a dark theater, no one can see me. I've got my pack of tissues on my like knee. It's just flowing out of me like big, huge teardrops. Yeah, and it just felt like I don't know, like I know that this sounds weird, but it felt good. Like it felt
Yeah.
so good
Crying
during
feels
and
good.
after. And also like I can't wait till you watch it because like I think we're gonna have a lot to share about it. And it's just one of those things too where like so I was listening to our most recent episode, which we filmed before I saw it, and there's literal things that we said in the episode that came up in the movie, and I'm like,
No.
oh man.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta
So
see it.
yeah,
And
I
that's a good
think.
argument to see it in theaters, actually.
Hmm.
And
Oh
in a
yeah,
19 plus theater.
and a 19 plus theater, and like just oh yeah, just lots and lots of big tears, and not like loudly being like oh no, oh, like any kind of like gasping, just like silently
Yeah.
like just
Because you
letting
don't
them like
disturb
letting the
other people.
tears flow into my ears and down my neck and just being like, okay, well this isn't going to stop for another couple minutes, so I'm not even going to grab the tissues yet because I just got to let it all out. Great job, Pixar, and everyone involved with Inside Out too. But yeah, so that's my cause for applause. I finally saw it, and it met my expectations, which were quite high. How about you?
That's amazing. I want to do an explanation for our listeners because I know we have some listeners in Australia and maybe in the States. I
Mm.
don't know if they exist in other countries. We have theaters here in Canada that are for 19 years and older. They're called VIP theaters,
Hmm.
and you can get alcohol at them, and it's just a movie theater. They have like waiters and waitresses, I guess, that bring you
Yep.
food to your seat. They're pretty amazing. So it's great that those theaters are still showing kid movies that adults want to see in the 19 plus theater too. I think that's great,
Hmm.
especially a movie like this for what you said, because it
Yeah.
gives people a vocabulary talk about mental health, and I think that's really great. So I just wanted to do that
Hmm.
explanation for our listeners out there that were like might be like, what are you talking about 19 plus theater? Yeah, it's
Yeah. It's
amazing. You
really
get
great.
real food. Like I can get a
Yeah.
salad there with
Yeah.
chicken on it, and I get a little glass of prosecco, and I drink my prosecco, and I eat my healthy-ish meal, and I watch the movie, and it's great, and there's
Yeah.
no kids.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, and the seats are really comfortable too. And
Oh
like
yeah, they're like
you get a little table and like yeah,
a
and then like
lazy boy chair
yeah,
basically that you
basically,
can
yeah.
like pivot back to look up at the screen if you it's
Hmm.
great. It's
Yeah.
great.
For us too, like there's like at least I don't know the ones you've been to, but we made sure to pick a spot that was like the two chairs are
Yeah.
connected,
Yeah,
and
we
then you
always do
can
that
like
too.
lift up the
And then it's a
armrest,
little
and then it's
couch.
like a
Yeah,
little
you lift up the
couch.
armrest
Yeah.
in between the two chairs. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's so great.
So yeah, so great movie. Also, Ben and I were talking about it after. It's like the last time we saw a movie in theaters was Barbie last year, where I also cried. So maybe that's become my new like litmus test of like, do I need to see it in theaters? It's like, well, how much am I gonna cry?
How
A
much do I want to
lot.
be emotionally involved
So
in this? Or like, yeah, and
yeah.
picking and choosing the ones, it doesn't always have to be a big blockbuster that, I mean, there's some
Hmm.
things that I do think you need to see on screen, big screen for cinematography, but also there's other things that maybe you want to see on big screen for that movie experience of being emotionally connected to it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
excellent insight and feedback, Shadow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
My cause for applause is I was on a podcast. I got
Ooh,
recorded for a podcast this week,
nice.
and it was with one of our guests, Emily Regan. We
Oh,
did the
nice.
episode with her called Starting Over. If you haven't listened to it, everyone, it's a great episode. But she also has a podcast that's called Unicorns Unite. And
Nice.
it's for freelancers. It's like business advice or how to run your own business. And I went on and we kind of took a different spin and talked about how do you look after you and how do you manage stress and worry and imposter
Hmm.
syndrome and all that kind of stuff for yourself and for your clients if you're a service provider. And ultimately, the conversation went to a pretty deep place, which was really great. And we had a lot of really good strategies that we talked about and some good stories. So I'm really proud of it. So I will let everyone know when that episode comes out, but I had a lot of fun being on
Oh,
that
good.
podcast and it felt really great. So thank you to Emily for being a guest on our podcast, and thank you for inviting me to be an episode on yours. And I just love the name of her podcast, Unicorns Unite. So there's a
Hmm.
few things in my life that I love. One is the color purple and another one is unicorns, and I'll never give those two things up from like childhood that give me that childlike wonder and awe.
Nice.
Unicorns, purple and sparkles, okay?
Amazing. You know that we both love cribbage. We did a mini cribbage tournament this past weekend between Ben and I found an older deck of cards that is purple and has unicorns on the back.
Ooh,
Yeah, and like
nice.
even like so like the red suits are like a hot fuchsia color, and the black
Ooh.
suits are like a deep purple.
That's a
So
fun
it's
deck of
nice.
cards. See,
Yeah, and
I
actually,
still go for those things, right? I'm like,
yeah,
oh, ooh, yeah,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
unicorns.
We also have this deck of cards that we got as a gift a few years, maybe just last Christmas actually, and we broke those ones open too. And it was such like a weird experience for me because the black suits were a very light gray.
Oh, that would feel weird. I
And
get
the red
that.
suit is like it's still very soft, but it's not like as big of a change. But it's just interesting I how this is now two decks of cards that we have that like the black suits and the red suits are not black or red. Yeah,
It's
it's
challenging again the patterns in your brain, right? So
mm-hmm,
it feels weird
mm-hmm.
because you're so used to red and black for a deck of cards. So I love
Yeah.
that. I love like those really simple things we
Mm-hmm.
can do in our life to just challenge our preconceived patterns or the patterning in our brain. And it's
Yeah.
okay to feel weird about it, right? Like you're like, oh,
Yeah.
weird means change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because
Right?
it like,
Like,
and it, yeah. And now that we've had this experience of like, it's not just how you feel, but because you can kind of use your brain to like look at how you feel from like, down, like
yeah.
wearing a little hat on your brain of emotions. It's so interesting to like, instead of just being like, oh, what? This dex is weird. I'm like, oh, I am experiencing a reaction to
Yeah,
how
yeah,
strange this
exactly.
deck of cards
And
is.
this feels weird. Yeah.
And it's not as much of an emotional takeover versus like yeah just being like very reactive, but yeah, and actually after a while of using those ones like it was very calming like to
Oh,
have such a soft
interesting.
like to have it such a softer color scheme. So yeah, I don't know what the psychology is behind it, but I like it. I so Yeah.
Well, we like change too. Like we resist it, but then once we're in it, we actually like
Mm,
it, right? Like
mm-hmm.
brain likes things that are like the brain likes novelty,
Right.
right? Because it can get excited about like, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Are you ready to share your regret?
Yes.
Do you have a preamble for your regret?
No, I'm just gonna, it's a shorter one today, which I know I've said like every episode this season, but this time I think it will be.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. I need to release the regret I feel over judging other people's conversation style. I used to think that like if you couldn't keep a conversation going, you weren't a really good friend, or like you were a good friend maybe to someone else. Because to me, being a good friend was no awkward pauses. You just keep the conversation going. Like you add the fire and you keep going, and then someone else adds gasoline and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going until everyone's talking so fast that no one else could understand you from the outside. To me, that was friendship. I also, have recognized that this was partly my ADHD and that not having a gap in the conversation was not something to be proud of. But I'm like slowly learning how to give other people the floor and like not just have them talk, but also have them be quiet and me stay quiet. It's very easy for me to jump right in and fill in any silence in any situation, business meeting, improv class, road trip. Like I just had to keep the silence at bay, and I felt it was my responsibility to do so. So the regret isn't about me doing that. The regret is about when other people couldn't do that, I really judged them. I really thought like, oh my gosh, like what do you even bring to this? And I need to release that because I find it still comes up a little bit as I meet new people, new dog friends, new all these other people in my life. As I meet them, I find that my default setting is to go back to that idea of like, well, I'm just going to keep talking and someone else will interrupt me if they have something important to say. But I'm noticing now that like there's a lot of value in the silences, and there's a lot of value in stepping back and letting other people kind of explore things or explain things, or even if they're explaining something to me that I already know, like to not just shut them up and say, oh, I already know that. Like that used to be something I used to do all the time. And just like because you never know that they might explain a part of it that you have glossed over before. And also, there's also just value in letting other people share and be their captive audience. That is who I was then. And I have grown in a lot of ways, as I've just said. I've learned how to give the floor to other people, I've learned how to enjoy the silence. So I am so relieved to have had this experience of being diagnosed and like going through the motions of, just I just not talking at all. Like I've done that too, where as a little experiment, I've shown up to group settings where I've promised myself I won't say a word. And at the end of it, like my nails are a mess because I'll start picking at my nails because I want to talk so badly. But at the same time, it's just been so eye-opening to like realize that I have value beyond just being someone who performs and someone who entertains. There's also a lot of value, not for other people, but in myself in being entertained. So, yeah, so this one isn't as crisp as some of my other regrets. It's because it's pretty fresh. I was at a friend's house about a month ago. And because there had been such a gap between the last time I saw these friends, I could really see the different ways I communicate now being put on display. And I could hear this like little voice in the back of my head that said, tell them this story, tell them that, like, as opposed to like just letting the silence happen. But I was able to let like the voice in front of my head say, nope, just be silent. Someone else will pick up the conversation. And yeah, so that's my regret that I want to share today. I guess it's more of a habit. I'm not sure. So yeah,
Thank you for sharing. Do you want feedback or do you just want to be heard?
yeah, feedback today would be good.
There's power in silence, and I think you're starting to
Mm,
acknowledge that. And I've been there too, and I'm learning how to do that too. So I have
mm-hmm.
a curious question. So my first curious question is, since you've like started this kind of realization, do you feel like you have deeper connections or deeper friendships? Has it changed?
Hmm.
Or are you connecting to strangers in a different way? Or
It's
newer,
interesting.
fresher connections or friendship, you know?
I actually feel like it's less deep, but I don't think that that's true.
Mm.
I think, again, I think because I used to be someone who could, like, I remember this like literally on a report card. She could talk the ear off a cob of corn. Uh, definitely in one of my high school.
1990s. Yep.
Definitely on one of my report cards. And and I took such pride in that. So I think I viewed experiences before where if there had never been a gap in conversation as a really good experience. And I don't think I was necessarily putting myself in the shoes of the other person.
Yeah.
And so now it feels like I know that it temporarily feels like the connection is not as deep, but I know that's because of my own programming.
Yeah,
You know what
like
I
you're
mean? Like,
feeling
yeah.
you're more aware of what the world around you and the people around you now. And I
Hmm.
think that's a huge gift. And that's a lot of growth, right? Like
Oh,
that
yeah.
takes years for people to develop that
Hmm.
skill. It's not really a skill that we're taught. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I get what you're saying. Like it might feel lighter, but it actually is deeper. Because
Yeah.
here's my theory. Because you're exerting less energy in that conversation
Hmm.
to be a performer. And so maybe you
Hmm.
got a high out of those conversations before because you were a
Yeah,
performer. So that felt deep because you had like this surge of dopamine or adrenaline,
exactly.
and you're not getting as much dopamine and adrenaline out of it, but maybe you're getting more of those even keeled emotions out of it, which feel
Hmm.
lighter, but actually
Yeah.
are deeper, like serotonin and oxytocin are actually
Mm.
are deeper, more connected, like happiness and connection hormones, but they're more even keeled. So you're not
Hmm.
getting that high from, wow, that's like really self-aware of you and really profound for you to say, they feel lighter.
Hmm.
And I'm interpreting that as not being as connected, but they actually are more connected. And
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I think you said it exactly. Like this idea that like because I was performing, I got such a like jolt of energy out of that.
Hmm.
And I think that's where the regret is too, is that like it wouldn't just be the jolt of energy. There'd be this jolt of like I'm better than other people because I kept the conversation going. I'm a
Hmm.
real
Yeah.
conversationalist. Like it used to, and I mean, Ben too, like even when we very first started dating, this was something we would talk about with each other. Be like, wow, isn't it funny how other people just can't carry a conversation? I know. And like we would like literally, that was literally a topic of conversation we had. It was about how both of us were so good at conversing and no one converses as good as the two of us do.
Mhm.
And
Egos, right? Egos
right.
talking,
And
egos
yeah,
conversing. Yeah.
oh, totally. And now even like in our relationship, I find there's times where he's talking and I just want to jump in there. I just want to jump in there because there's a silence. I want to change the subject. I want to make it more light. I want to, but every single time I've made the choice to not talk, it's been better. So I'm giving my brain that proof that like, okay, just don't talk and just see where this
Listen.
goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
listen. So I want to say something else too about like I like how you said I go to my default setting.
Mm.
Our default settings a lot of the times are habits that we created as teenagers. And I
Mm.
think we've talked about this on the podcast before. I'm pretty
I
sure we
think
have. That's
interestingly
when
with Emily,
myelination, right? It
yeah.
was it with Emily. It might have been with Emily where we talked about between the age of kind of like 12 and 20. Those are where the base of our like most deep rooted habits are because the
Mm.
brain is actually like cementing them in with myelination.
Right.
But the thing is we can be aware of those default settings and we can change them, and you're in the process of doing that. And I think it shows again huge self-awareness when you say I realize I'm going back to my default setting
Mm.
of this. And so I have a curious question a little bit about that
Yeah.
too, is the keeping a conversation going, keeping it high energy, is that part of people pleasing? Like, does your brain think if I'm helping this conversation going, I'm helping the other people?
Actually, so I'm so glad that you talked about it being a high school, well, not just high school, but
Yeah, but like
adolescent
in those
thing.
kind of years, yeah.
Yeah, I had a really hard time in like we don't technically have middle school in Canada, but those middle school years, like grade
So
six,
grade
seven,
7 and
eight,
8. Yeah.
worst time of my life. Honestly, like when people say, "Oh, I would never repeat high school," I would repeat high school. I would never repeat grade 7 and 8. It was awful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Even for the first bit of grade 9 too, like I was really quiet. And through coming out of my shell, which was always a thing we have to do as people, but also I feel like really pressured as a teenager. I think I found safety in
Mm.
being that person because if I'm already really loud and outgoing and able to keep the conversation going, then no one can make like a joke at my expense. Or if they make a joke at my expense, now I have the permission to shoot a joke back.
Yeah.
And like, because I'm already this loud, comical character, I feel like that gave me a lot of protection in a way. When my like, again, and bring it back to Inside Out, like, I wish I had that language when I was that age of
Yeah.
like anxiety has taken over the console. Like I can't function because
Yeah.
anxiety is at the helm. I think I definitely like used this very talkative, outgoing persona as safety. So it wasn't necessarily people pleasing, even though it definitely has a flavor of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely more just my own, like you're saying, default setting is what you created for yourself. So yeah, I think that's what it was for me, is that I felt safer being this loud character than just quietly observing the world and feel, I guess, not defended, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too. I think as we gain greater understanding of like neurodivergencies, what introverts
Hmm.
are, all of these sorts of things, but we grew up in a time when we didn't know what any of these things were, right? In the
Yeah.
in the 80s and 90s. And it has created these default settings. But what's really interesting, you were saying you and Ben would have conversations like, oh, we're great conversationalists, right?
Hmm.
Christian and I, when we first met, we were both kind of loud too. And as we developed and our careers created these opportunities for us to learn how to listen more, right? Me being a caseworker, my husband being a homeless outreach worker, and then eventually a
Hmm.
caseworker as well. And sometimes we would have these conversations. We now like to observe people, and I'm a real people observer. Like I'm like, okay, I'm observing this, I'm observing the behavior. I want to figure out what that person is so that I can
Mm.
support them
Hmm.
or just be with them or be in conversation with them, right? So we would actually have the opposite conversation, which
Mm.
is so interesting. We would be in a room or be observing something on the beach, another crowd of people, and even sometimes to this day we go, that person's taking over the conversation. There's something, they're
Mm.
insecure about something.
Hmm.
Right? Like we would acknowledge that the people that are like sucking the energy or overtaking the conversations, we're like, wow, that dude's insecure.
Right.
That
Right.
person's insecure, right? We're like, that's interesting, right?
Hmm.
So it's interesting. We like see the opposite. And what I was gonna say for you, and like I'm really proud of you for saying it too, or you already acknowledged it, but I'm gonna acknowledge it again,
Hmm.
is it takes a lot of confidence to be quiet, and you acknowledge that, right? It's
Hmm.
building your confidence to be quiet. And there's a lot of power in the quiet because it takes a lot of
Hmm.
confidence to be like, okay, 5 seconds of quiet is okay. I'm going to let that person process their thoughts and respond. And I
Hmm.
don't have to fill that space because maybe to you that 5 seconds feels like an awkward 30 seconds, but it
Right.
really is only 5 seconds. And you're
Hmm.
giving that person space to process and then say what they want to say. And that's support and safety too, because how many times have you like been rushing through a conversation and then gone back to your car or left the conversation, be like, oh, I should have said this. Oh, I should have said this. Oh,
Hmm.
but really what I wanted to say was this. And when you're allowing for that silence to happen, you're giving the other person that you're connecting with the gift of processing so that they can say what they want to say. And then you're going to
Hmm.
have a deeper conversation. So I want to acknowledge that you're good at that, that you're
Oh,
getting
thank
better
you.
at it, but I also want to acknowledge that you acknowledge it yourself, which is
Mm.
also like showing your confidence. So, yeah, this
Hmm.
was do you still feel like silence is uncomfortable? That's my last question.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it depends. I think it depends on what I'm waiting for, or if there's a
Mm,
wait associated with that quiet. Like if a question's been put out there and like both people are being quiet to like see if the other person will answer first.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks, but at the same time, like it's temporary and I can get through it. But if it's like, like let's just enjoy enjoy sitting here reading our own books. Like that's something really incredible that I desperately wanted as a young child,
Yeah.
but gave up. And it's funny, every time I work on like inner child stuff, there's a lot of like sitting in silence and like
Mm.
coloring or journaling or reading or doing these like really quiet activities that I got a lot of pleasure in when I was really young. Threw those away when, the shadow who's fun and outgoing and has friends. Like I think I also kind of partnered the idea with being loud as with the idea of having friends.
Yeah.
Like, where like all those quiet hobbies, as much as they brought me a lot of joy, it also meant that I was a loser. So to
Yeah. And
engage in them now is all like it's beautiful and I have the choice to do it. Um, so, but even then, like sometimes 45 minutes into an activity like that, I get itchy and I need to be like, okay, like it also depends if I'm alone or not alone, right?
yeah.
So there's lots.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because I didn't have a great grade 6, 7, and 8 either. I
Mm,
was bullied. And then the first
hmm
half of my grade 9, I was really quiet too while I was finding kind of a new friends.
Right.
So it's funny that I had a similar experience to you and we've never talked about it. Yeah, some of that programming, I feel that too, is if I'm doing something alone or being quiet, that I'm the loner in the corner or whatever, right? But that's actually
hmm
not the case. And it's actually an amazing life skill to have as an adult to take 5 minutes or
Yeah.
40 minutes because we don't do that as adults. And that's why we get stressed
hmm
out and overwhelmed and burnt out and worried and all of those things that you just said. Those are amazing stress management techniques, coloring,
hmm
just
hmm
being, reading a book quietly, just sitting with someone that you love quietly. Like those
hmm
are all incredible stress management strategies, right?
hmm
I mean,
hmm
it's funny because we had them as kids and then we gave them up because we thought they
Right.
weren't cool. But exactly what you
Yeah.
just said, now it is cool.
hmm
Right?
Yeah.
Now it is cool.
I have very clear memories of grade 9 and being like out at recess with like my journal and just like sitting there writing in my journal and like people kind of laughing when they went by and like me not really caring. And then I don't know exactly where the blip happened where I did care. But then that definitely came along with this idea of this loud, outgoing person. So,
It's also funny, like when we transition into something else, we go all the way and then we pull
mm-hmm.
back. So it's almost been like a 10 or 15 years transition for you, right? Like you went
Right.
all the way to the outgoing person. And
Yeah.
then we kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we go to the medium, but we
Mm-hmm.
pull ourselves back. That's actually a more true idea of who we are, a true connection to who we are when we do that transition. So
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to like go all the way to one end of the spectrum, then pull yourself back into the middle or
Mm-hmm.
pull yourself slightly back. And that can take years and years and time and a lot of understanding. And it sounds like that's what you've done.
Yeah,
And
I hope
that's pretty
so.
cool.
I also have this like inkling around that right now introverts are cool. Right? When we were kids,
Mm,
extroverts were cool. So
yeah.
I really pushed
Yeah.
myself to be an extrovert. And
Yeah.
now I'm wondering like, did I actually become more introverted throughout COVID, throughout all this other stuff that we've been doing? Or am I just kind of someone who like wants to fit in so badly that I'm like, oh no, I'm an introvert now too.
Well, do
Like,
you feel better when you do it? I think that's the thing.
that's
Because
such
when
a
you're
good
forcing
question.
yourself to be something you're not, that's not true. So you've
Hmm
acknowledged that spending all that energy can also be exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's how you can tell. I don't think you're being
hmm
an introvert because you think it's cool. I think you're discovering something about myself. But
Yeah. No, I appreciate that because to me, again, because I question everything from every angle all the time.
mhm,
It's
yeah,
it's definitely taken up a bit of headspace that like, oh, like who is the true shadow? How do you ever know the answer to that question? But
you just do.
I guess. Wow, that's very
The worst
profound.
advice ever. I don't know. But you will, right? Like when you have
hmm
that quiet moment and you're going, oh, this feels good.
Mm.
That's how you know.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, you're learning that. So is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, just thank you. I think that was a good one for me.
Yeah, I think that was
Yeah.
a really good one, and again, really relatable. And you said it feels kind of fresh for you, and so I really want to thank you
Hmm.
for sharing it because I see that in you. Like I see the progress, and
Hmm.
I don't know if this podcast is helping, but we are
I
learning
think
some
so.
techniques. I think it is. It's helping me too.
Yeah.
Just like last episode when I talked about unsolicited advice, this podcast is
Hmm.
helping me to like be quiet and not have to fill the space with unsolicited advice as well,
Hmm.
and to
Hmm.
respect people's wants or boundaries or needs. When we say, do you want feedback or you just want to be heard?
Hmm.
That can feel like the silence too. Like if you really want to give the advice and someone's like, no, I just want to be heard, you're like, okay, I have to be okay with this. I have to be okay with being
Yeah,
silent about
yeah.
this, right? And there's like a quiet confidence with that. And that quiet
Hmm.
confidence is really attractive and really appealing to me, people that have that quiet
Hmm.
confidence. And I'm proud of myself when I display that quiet confidence too. I don't have to prove myself
Hmm.
to everyone.
Yeah,
I
and
can just show who I am to people and they can love me for exactly who I am.
hmm
Yeah.
when we were talking last time, I even said something near the end of the episode where I was like, oh, this, because like I wanted to literally talk about this last episode, but we had been talking forever. So I was like, no, let's just park this as a separate regret because, like, similarly in that previous episode, when I was like, oh, I'm trying to put my friends together, I'm trying to be, be this like friend
Hmm.
matchmaker. Again, similarly, it was this idea of just like, I'm the fixer. I do all the things. And we got to like a spot where it was like, okay, so I have to really look at like how many times am I monopolizing conversation and how many times am I like trying to force things that aren't there, which got me thinking about this whole idea. So I think your questions last week is what got me to start thinking about this. And so, yeah, thank you for that as well.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to do you want to just jump in? Do you have something to share before you jump into your regret?
I actually feel a lot of embarrassment around this one.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And this has to do with my health. This has to do with just not knowing. I know some of this is new stuff, and some listeners might be going, yeah, duh. I can't believe you didn't know that, Victoria.
Okay.
And it has to do with my health about my women parts. So it's funny that you were
Okay.
talking about your period at the beginning. We all know I've been on a journey with women's health, and I shouldn't feel embarrassed about women's health. We shouldn't feel embarrassed about it. So kind of again, and again, I didn't know what Shadow's like check-in was going to be, but at
Hmm.
the beginning of the episode, and I kind of said, you need to talk about these things, not push them under, not, shame them or whatever. So here we go. I feel embarrassed about this one, a little bit of shame maybe, but here we go.
Okay.
Okay, I have something. This is a habit I need to change, something I need to let go of in order to move forward. So I'm going to let go of the embarrassment around this. We're going to talk about it today so that I can move forward. All right. I went for a checkup with my OBGYN. He was also my surgeon after I had all the fibroid things. And I'm having some swelling. Okay. So my vagina is a little bit swollen, everyone. And so the questions that happened were, do you wear cotton underwear? Do you, right? But one question actually shocked me because I thought I was doing everything right. Like, don't wash with soap, just wash with water. You want to look after the pH balance of your vagina, right? But here's the question that shocked me that I wasn't doing. He said, do you shave your bikini line? Yes. I'm afraid of waxing. Did you know, I didn't know this, that there's lymph nodes around your bikini line. And when you get like razor burn on them, that actually irritates the lymph nodes. And that can go into your entire lymphatic system and it can cause infections or irritations in your lymph system, which can cause health problems and immune system problems and cause inflammation like all over the body. I didn't know that. No, nobody ever told me that. I didn't know that. And it's not just that, it's that like razors carry bacteria, we leave them out, right? Those types of things. So those hair follicles can get infected, ingrown hairs, hair follicles, but also they're directly attached to a whole lymph node system. And so now OBGYNs are suggesting waxing or getting like a bikini trimmer kind of thing. but no more shaving. So now I am 43-year-old woman who has to go get waxed for the first time. I kind of feel embarrassment about it a little bit, but I also didn't know, like, that's what we did in the 80s and 90s. Like, there wasn't this thing about having like very minimal hair down there in the 80s and 90s. It's more of a newer thing, I think. So we just shaved our bikini lines, right? That's what we learned to do. So I did, and I did wax. I did it. And it hurt. I'm not going to lie. But you know what? The hair still hasn't grown back in, and it's been 2 weeks. And I'm like, why wasn't I doing this sooner? Because I was like, the hair grows in so much faster when you shave, and when you wax, it doesn't. So, I mean, the consequence of me holding on to shaving or holding on to the embarrassment of not talking about it is my actual physical health. And I'm doing everything I can to make sure that my uterus, my vagina, my whole body as a woman is healthy. I've been on this journey for the past 4 years with my fibroid removal. And so I think this is kind of the last step. So I went out and bought myself a bunch of nice cotton underwear again. I found some cotton under with lace because I was like, I don't want this cotton underwear with daisies on it. It makes me feel like a 7-year-old. I'm a 43-year-old woman. I want to feel sexy. I want to feel confident. Cotton underwear with daisies on it doesn't do it for me. It might for you. I'm not judging you if it does out there, but for me, yeah. And I had a wax. So that's who I was then. That was part of my, I guess, I don't know, would you call it like sanitary habits or health habits or whatever you want to call it? And I've changed my health habits moving forward. And even though I was scared of it, I'm a little bit relieved, to be honest. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It is painful in the moment, but then you get like 2-3 weeks of not having to worry about it. So I already feel a little bit better and less inflamed in my body. And that's my regret. Thank you for listening.
Did you want feedback about this, or did you just want to share this today?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, I guess just first of all, you said, so you've gone for the wax and it did hurt. Did you take any kind of like pain mitigation ahead of time? Or
I didn't, and that's the thing. Like, this is why I've been fighting against waxing. I'm like, why do I have to do something that's gonna hurt? But now doctors are suggesting it.
Yeah. I've never been for a wax, and I don't ever plan to go for a wax.
Excellent. This is a great conversation then.
Yeah. So it's funny though, because you're like, oh, people are going to think it's so obvious. It's not obvious. It's not obvious if this is something that you don't struggle with. Like, I have a skin condition / immunocompromised state from having HS. Which for listeners stands for hidradenitis suppurativa. Send me a DM if you want to talk about that. But I shaved my bikini line at like 13 and had a huge infection.
Oh, interesting.
And it was literally like, oh, well, and at that point I already had HS, like it was only starting really like minimal, but they were like, that this is something you can't do. Like, you cannot shave your armpits, you cannot shave your bikini line, like even with your legs, like do it very infrequently. You have this condition, which means it's going to be harder to do those things. And I'll say I still do it sometimes because like, yeah, like you have something coming up and every time I regret it. Every single time I regret it.
Do you feel like, inflamed? Do you feel puffy?
Yeah,
do you feel like your lymph nodes are working on overload, or maybe you get a tickly throat, or like you feel something happening in your immune system?
Oh yeah, and I get the zits that we've talked about before. Like I get zits in my armpits, and they're disgusting. And yeah, that's from things like shaving. And sometimes it's not shaving the armpit that causes the zit in the armpit. It's like a whole lymphatic system, like you said. So I just wanted you to like maybe release the regret that like you didn't know, because up until now it had been working. So like, why would you change it, right? It's not broken, don't fix it, right? So like, I think that's completely understandable. I guess my question for you is like, do you see yourself going for another wax or like creating like a routine around it?
Yeah, I think I will. And I'm just going to have to change my mindset around it in terms of like, this is a bit of self-care or body care too, right? I put like nice lotions on my body. I have all my serums and my face creams for my face. This is part of it. You know, I try to go to like a water spa and sit in a hot tub once every couple months. This is part of it. Once a month or once every couple months, I'll just get waxed. I mean, Probably not so much in the winter as I do in the
Yeah,
summer because
yeah.
I'm in a bathing suit all the time in the summer when I go
Right.
walk on the beach and stuff, right? But so it's a good change, but if I hadn't known the health consequences,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have made the change.
Right.
There are some pretty big health consequences, like our immune systems, my
Mm-hmm.
inner walls of my vagina were swollen.
Right.
Not just from that, there are other reasons too, I think, like stress and my abs and my surgical scar and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And then
yeah,
like cotton underwear, we've talked about like period underwear before. They don't really make 100% cotton period underwear yet, so that's a challenge. Or
they
do they?
just came out with a pair like
Oh,
literally 3 weeks ago.
nice. Okay,
So
cool.
I'm ordering some of those
Yeah.
cotton period underwear from Knix. They just came out with a pair. So yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
and again, like feminine hygiene, our generation and generations like our parents' generation, it's not something I really talked about, right?
Oh, for
Like
sure.
we talk, I actually think we might talk more about sex than feminine
Hmm.
hygiene
Yeah, probably.
and sex than periods. So it's really ironic that at the beginning of at the beginning of this episode, you talked about your period. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we actually talk more about that than we do about feminine hygiene,
Mm-hmm.
female health, uterine health, period health, all of those sorts of things. So
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
though I'm feeling a little vulnerable talking about it right now, everybody, it's
Yeah.
also like something that I feel really passionate about having people open up the conversation about, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about our flows,
Right.
right? And that was one of the signs for me when I had fibroids was that my flow changed. Well, what does
Right.
that mean? What does the flow change? What is heavy? What is light? What
Mm-hmm.
is like we're disconnected from ourselves. Like if we're wearing tampons all the time, we might not even know what our flow is like. Like,
Mm-hmm.
does it come out at the front of your underwear or the back of your underwear? Like,
Right.
like how heavy is it? Like what, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is also part of connecting to yourself and connecting to being a female or a person in a female body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's part of, yeah, we should talk about it. And I didn't know that you're
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to shave.
Right.
I mean, I shaved my armpits and legs. He specifically said bikini line, so I'm not at the waxing armpits and legs part yet, but
Mm-hmm.
I just I didn't know.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's who I was then, and this is who I am
Mm-hmm.
now, and that's okay. Can I ask you a curious question?
Yeah.
You just not do you just
No.
not shave or do anything?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I trim, but like with scissors.
But your legs and your armpits, you just don't do anything?
Yeah.
Do you have like light hair or is it
Oh yeah, no, I'd have to trim. I have to with my armpits, I have to trim them every couple days. And if I forget, like again, like the last time I shaved my armpits, I thought I had done all the right steps. And this was like within the last 3 months. I was because I had gone too long without trimming.
yeah.
So I did the antibacterial exfoliation. Then I used like the Schick Intuition razor, brand new razor, because I know about the whole razors
Yeah.
harboring bacteria. Did both armpits, rinsed them off, like laid after my shower, like with my arms up so that like both armpits would dry
Yeah,
really
like
well.
airing out. Yeah.
Didn't put deodorant on because again, I knew that that would inflame things.
Yeah.
And within about 3 days, my whole body let me know that that was a mistake.
So for you,
So
it's
yeah,
not just the bacteria, it's actually like the follicles being irritated and the
yeah,
skin cells being irritated
yeah,
and all of
yeah.
that too, which I suspect is what's happening in the bikini line for many people too. It's not just
Hmm.
about the razor, it's about
Yeah.
the follicles being irritated, the lymph nodes. And the
Hmm.
thing is, we have lymph nodes in our bikini line, we have lymph nodes in our armpits, and we shave both
Yeah.
of those places.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things too where like every once in a while, and again, gender's a construct, but every once in a while I'm like, I wish I was a guy. Or like when I'm on my period and like things are so brutal, I all overhear Ben say to himself, man, I'm so happy I'm a guy.
Yeah.
And like and
Yeah.
yeah, because there are just different sets of rules. Like how would you know? Like same thing, like I can't really do like bubble baths or anything like that because I had problems with that when I was a kid. And like to this day, would I love to just like, yeah, go jump in a hot tub wherever, sure. But I know that I'm asking for skin issues
Wow.
after.
Wow.
So I just don't.
This is also like a sign out there, everybody, because many of
hmm
us judge women that have hairy armpits. No
hmm
judgment for women that have hairy
hmm
armpits. You don't know what's going
Yeah.
on. Or it's
And
just their choice to not shave
yeah,
their
yeah,
armpits,
yeah. And also the
right?
other way too, though, because I find that there is judgment. Like I I don't know, maybe that you can talk about this with you. Like my question for you is, was there anything else stopping you from getting a wax before? Was it just the pain or was it
Also, don't
what?
want somebody looking at my vagina.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
But then, you know what? This is going to sound really bad, but this is what I have to tell myself.
Yeah,
They've seen worse vaginas than
of
mine.
course. Yep. Yep, that's part of it.
Right? Like I'm fairly like polite and conservative about
hmm
my like, lady parts, right?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
and like that's kind of how I've been raised too. My doctor's gonna see it, and I don't.
hmm
Okay, now this other person's gonna see it too. But I tell myself that too whenever I go to get a pap smear too. I'm like, my
Right.
doctor has seen way worse vaginas than
Yeah, yeah,
mine,
yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
he's seen stinkier ones. He's seen, you know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, we all have this.
hmm
I think every woman, or I could be wrong, but I think every woman has a fear that their vagina smells.
Oh, of
And
course.
like that was like how teenage boys made fun of teenage girls,
hmm
was like, you
hmm
smell,
hmm
right? And so for me, that would never happen to me. I was never told that, but like I always
Right.
had this fear, like, oh my God, what if I smell? Or like
Yeah.
that's also like when we first get our periods, we don't really talk about that. And then, okay, here's the one, right?
Okay.
This is like kind of urban myth, kind of not. But remember you're a teenager and you're like, oh no, there's a dog. The dog's gonna come up and sniff me because it knows that I have my
Sure.
period,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you're like, the cute boy that I like is walking the dog, and you're like, right.
Right.
So there's all these like pre-programmed things around our vulvas and vaginas, and I'm trying to deprogram those things out for me and really to love my vulva and love my vagina and
hmm
love my period and love my
Right.
period flow. And the only thing that started me on this journey of really recognizing maybe things I've been repressing or is when I got the fibroids, and I was like, I'm gonna like lean
mm
into womanhood here. I'm gonna lean
hmm
into like women's health and lean into this and love all the things about it. Because
hmm
here's one thing, here's one mindset shift that I kind of made around the period. We are so lucky to have periods
hmm
because it is a programmed in physical release that we get once a month. We
hmm
actually, as women, practice letting go once a month.
Right.
Our body lets go.
hmm
Our
hmm
body releases some old and regenerates new for us
hmm
every month. And if you think about it that way, that's a gift.
hmm
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
So,
so it's so interesting. What I was actually trying to get at there though was not about that kind of judgment. I feel that there are certain people who would judge someone who gets a wax.
mm.
Similar to people who are like, well, I don't need that much makeup, or like women are too
Oh,
vain,
yeah.
women are too this. Like I feel like there is a little bit of that stops me from getting a wax as well, is that like then I'm one of those women
It's
who like
interesting. That thought didn't even cross my mind.
that's amazing.
And
I'm
that's the
so
difference
happy.
between you and I in
Yeah,
some
for
in some
sure.
places, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's really
yeah.
interesting. I didn't even think about that.
hmm Yeah.
Of like what, like being judged as like,
Or just like someone who's like to care about your looks is bad, right?
yeah,
Like that's something that was
yeah.
programmed into me very young and still to this day. And then, you try to get ready for an event and it's like you got the one voice saying like, well, you can't just show up in your pajamas. Then you got another voice saying, well, you can't look too perfect because then you're one of those women.
Interesting. Can I comment on that?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I think it's important to have a balance in that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm owning that I care about some things as I age. Honestly,
Yeah.
like I'm getting more into doing a face massage because I see my eyebrows drooping and
Right, right, right.
massaging my chin whenever I put my expensive face creams on and stuff. And I'm like, I'm fine with that. I'm not judging
Mm-hmm.
myself for that. And I think there's kind of like that balance between do what you got to do for you to feel good about yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
I think when you do too much, you actually stop feeling good about yourself
Right.
because then you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for like societal pressures.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't judge people. I don't know what other people's level of doing things for them to feel good about themselves is in terms of appearance. So I try my very, very best not to judge people, not to be oh, she has Botox in her lips. Great. If that makes you feel good about yourself when you look in the mirror and it builds your confidence, great, right? So I don't know what people's level of that is. So I try my best not to judge that. But I'm also like owning that there's things that I might want to do for me. And that's okay. And I'm going to own it and be honest about it. Like if I ever get some Botox on, my chin because I'm starting to get jowls, I'll tell you. I'll tell you on the podcast. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm thinking about it. And it's for me. It's not for anybody else because it's not for like my Instagram. It's for me to like be happy when I look in the mirror. So I don't know. There's that when I decided to have that confidence in myself to do what I wanted to do, I decided also I'm not going to judge other people. Like I haven't really done anything, to be honest with you, but I'm like, eventually maybe one day I will get a little bit of Botox in the chin or something, but I haven't done anything up to this point. But I mean, there are things that we've all done, like plucked our eyebrows, right? Which we've talked about on this podcast, plucked our eyebrows or even body hair. That's another thing. We're talking about it today, right? So but it's a really good comment, and it's really interesting that my brain didn't go there at all and your brain did. So it's interesting.
I was just curious about it because I know that's another reason why, like not another reason, but like of all, like the main reason I don't get a wax is that I'm a big baby and that I don't want someone else to see my big stinky vagina, of course. Those are the two reasons. But then the third reason is this other like kind of weird, like, what does it mean about your identity? Like, which is not fair. And I wish. No,
it's not fair. You're exactly right. It's not fair. And it's not fair that society's made you feel that way. And it's also not fair that society and men have made us feel like our vaginas smell because they don't. That's just like female smell. It's part of who we are, right? Like it's not a bad smell. It's just a smell. And if there is a bad smell, then you might have an infection and you should go get it looked after, right? But it's not like I know I'm getting really deep here, but like know what your smell is too.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that smells like a healthy vagina. My vagina's healthy. That's what a healthy vagina smells like. Right?
Yeah.
Like know these things about yourself. Yeah. Okay. I think the embarrassment's gone now. What I'm talking about, but like.
Okay. Also, is the swelling coming down, like physically? Like,
the swelling is coming down.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's good because that can't be comfortable, especially in the boat and like. No,
it hasn't been comfortable, and I mean, again, it's a combination of a bunch of things. I still have like issues with my surgical scar from my surgery that need to be dealt with. Like it didn't heal properly, and pelvic floor issues and stuff, but. Just these little tips are helping it to get better as I work on getting my pelvic floor healthier and things like that. My OBGYN was like, it's probably a combination of all these things. So the things that you can do right away before we get you into pelvic floor physiotherapy are only wear cotton underwear and don't shave, right? Those are two things that you can do right now, right away, and it will start to make a difference. And I'm like, all right, okay.
Yeah.
Right? What are the small and slow solutions while I'm waiting to get into the bigger, deeper solutions, right? Totally. And that's like how I look at life in general anyways. So thanks for letting me talk about a very private matter. Pun intended.
Love it.
Yeah. I'm probably going to get off this recording and be like, okay, we're going to put that out there. Okay, we're going to put it out there to the public. I'm talking about my vagina.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But I think it's important to talk about.
Yeah, it is important to talk about. So did you ever watch the show Hacks?
I think I watched the first or second season.
Okay. So the third season's out right now. Not Jean Smart, but the other actress, her name's Hannah. I think it's Einbinder.
She plays the younger girl.
She plays the younger girl.
The assistant girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So she has a stand-up special out right now, and it's phenomenal. It's so great. But a big portion of it, she talks about her vagina, or not her vagina, but her period. I guess she talks about both. But and I remember thinking, and I actually talked to Ben about this after we watched it, about how like when we were younger, I remember there being like a culture of like, oh man, those female comedians, God, they can't shut up about their period. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I remember hearing that over and over and over again, that like female comedians just talk about their period all the time, and that's not funny. Okay, I remember hearing that over and over and over again.
It's funny to us.
It's funny to us. So that's part of it.
Like,
And also, like, Hannah's approach to it in her special is dynamic and interesting and funny and all the things you want it to be. So, like how can both of these things exist, right? Like how can it be that in the 90s we were told comedians, especially female comedians, talk too much about their periods, and now here's a young woman doing a comedy special where a big portion of it is about her period, and it's still fresh and interesting. And,
change
you
is
know,
slow.
change is
is
slow.
slow.
That's got to be part of it, because like
Change is slow. And I mean, I hope that me talking about this today, us talking about this today, both of us, helps contribute to that change. We got to
Yeah.
talk about our bodies, just a
Yeah.
body. I had this teacher.
Mhm.
Okay, this is my grade 7 sex ed teacher. I'm going to give a shout out to Mrs. Holland.
Okay.
Great, fantastic teacher, grade 7. This is the first day of sex ed in grade 7. So great. We all walk into the room as boys and girls together, right? And she's like, "What's this?" And she points at her arm. We're like, "It's your arm." And she's like, "That's right. Everybody say arm." We're all like, "Arm," right? Like
Right.
we're grade 7, and like uncomfortable. She's like, "What's this?" She points to her head. We're like, "It's your head." She's like, "Everybody say head." She's like, "What's this?" She points to her foot. We're like, "Foot." And then she's like, "Now everybody say penis." Right? Like all these like grade 7 kids. She's like, "Everybody say arm, 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 arm." We're like, "Arm, arm, arm." She's like, "Penis, penis, penis," right? Vagina, vagina, vagina. She's like, "They're just body parts. We can say the words the same way we say arm and foot and toe and nose," right? And like, I'll never forget that class. And that happened when I was like, what, 12 or 13 years old?
Yeah.
And anybody that I talked to that had her as a teacher that went to my elementary school is like, yeah. The first day of sex ed was fantastic, right?
Oh,
like we were uncomfortable, but by the end we're like, penis, right? She got her point across, and it was really great the way she did it. And I mean, I think it's a very, very, it's still a relevant point. People don't even want to say the words.
Oh yeah.
When we talk about our bodies, and we should. And also, you might have heard me say vulva, right? Because the vagina is the inside, everybody. The vulva is the outside. It's not your hoo-ha.
Or you're down there.
Or you're down there.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's funny. It's like, I'm sure I learned a lot in sex ed, but I only have one distinct memory from it. And it actually has nothing to do with sex, which is that someone in my class, and I remember who it was, asked about what does contraception mean? Because it's a pretty big word, and we were in grade 6. Everyone laughed, including myself, because like at that point I was like starting to become more aware of like social dynamics. And I remember laughing along and like, you know, being like, haha, I'm in on the joke, because like, you know, haha, you don't know what contraception is, right? And we were all having a good old time. And like the teacher was like, okay, you're all having a great time laughing. Does anyone want to define it?
And like
no
nobody,
one could.
yeah.
And it was amazing, because again, like that whole like there's no stupid questions thing, you know, it must have been so embarrassing for him the way everyone laughed. But he asked a question that like none of us could answer. So like, you know, and again, I get it. We were already in an uncomfortable space. We were already talking about things that are really uncomfortable. And so that maybe felt like a sense of relief. And this person was kind of known to be the class clown. So like, you know, like if he's being actually like sensitive in a moment, we're all going to be like, ha 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 ha. That for some reason, of all the other things from sex ed or like that time in my life, that's a memory that's like core, like it is in my psyche.
Isn't it amazing the impact that teachers have? We can remember like one core memory, and you never know, but that's a lesson for us as human beings. Someone might remember something about me that I totally don't remember, but it's part of their core memories, right? So it's just like a good reminder of the influence we have on other people's lives with our actions and how much we matter, right? Because I mean, that was like 30 years ago for me, that sex ed class, right?
Yeah.
So Yeah, that's interesting. I think we have two examples of two good teachers here. Yeah.
And it was definitely, I don't know about you, but our sex ed teacher was like a traveling, like it wasn't our regular
Oh no,
teacher.
she was my grade 7 homeroom
Oh,
class
I see.
teacher.
Nice. Yeah, no,
She
no,
was,
no.
she
Ours,
also taught
yeah.
science. She
Oh,
also
nice.
taught, yeah, she was our teacher. Yeah.
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 No, that's great. No, we definitely had someone who did all the, like, clearly this was their job. They went from school
Interesting.
to school to school doing the sex ed curriculum,
Hmm.
which I think in a way did like, I think it's helpful in a way because like kids are still going to respect the teacher. And there's not like this lingering, like, oh God, like my teacher heard me ask this,
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
So I do think it was a nice, a good approach, at least for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thank you for letting me talk about down there
yeah,
and sex ed.
yeah.
But I'm glad I got it out there. And honestly, if one person is listening to this and goes, "Oh shoot, maybe I should wax instead of shave," and then
hmm
I've done my job.
Yeah, for sure.
I've done my public service announcement. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say about anything?
I have lots of little tangents, but I'm going to just let it be, enjoy the silence, and throw it over to you to close out our episode.
All right, let's do our 3 breaths, everybody. Come on to the front edge of your seat if it is safe for you to do so. And put your feet on the floor again if it's safe for you to do so. And just acknowledge your connection to the floor and to the earth. And you can even push your feet down a little bit, sink into it. Acknowledge that that's gravity holding on to you. You are supposed to be here on the face of this planet, and gravity will never let you fly away. That means that you are worthy just because you are. Let's do 3 breaths of self-compassion and calling in. Taking a big breath in and a slow exhale out, saying to yourself, I know forgiveness may be challenging, but it can also be liberating. I'm calling in the humility to allow forgiveness to enter my life and experience how it transforms me. On this next breath, taking a big breath in and a long exhale out, my body holds immense wisdom. It can guide me toward healing and wellness. I'm calling in the ability to listen to my body and learn from it. And on this last breath, big inhale in and a nice, gentle, long exhale out. I am choosing to believe that I am magnificent. I am calling in joy, connection, strength, and love. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for supporting us. There's so many ways you can support us, everyone. You can give us a 5-star review. You can like us. You can follow us, which helps with our numbers in the algorithm as well, if you follow in Spotify or follow in Apple Podcasts. So thank you so much for your support. And if you want to learn more ways to support us, listen to the end credits or check the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Shadoe, as always. I appreciate you so much. And I always value all the conversations we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
This episode of Let's Relieve Regret was produced by Shadoe Ball and Victoria Muir-Bercia.
Editing by me, Victoria Muir-Bercia.
We are an independent podcast supported by you, our listeners.
If you think this podcast sends a valuable message, you had an aha moment, or learned something new about yourself, help us realize our goal of reaching as many listeners as possible.
We encourage you to take action and support us right now by choosing one of the following options.
You can easily support us by
Following us on Instagram at relieve.regret.
tell 2 friends.
Leave a 5-star review on whatever app you're listening to us on.
Leave a tip at coffee.com/Let's Relieve Regret podcast. That's ko-fi.com/Let's Relieve Regret podcast.
Join our conversations in the Facebook group, Let's Relieve Regret Podcast.
Find all this information, all the links, and more in the podcast notes. Okay, bye.
Bye.